again. Yeah, you hear some of the best Zoom stories, I tell you.
It's all good. It's this has happened to pretty much every single one of us. I guarantee it.
I don't even know what happened.
Something was going on in Texas.
Be relieved that nobody hacked it. A couple of horror stories which I cannot repeat because they're not family friendly.
Okay, so we have almost everybody back right now. Just get Jane there. 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. We're missing one person yet. Andrea, just right?
Yes, just Andrea, I think.
Oh, there's Joseph too. Okay. So yeah, so just before all of that fun, the agenda package is going to start to look a little bit different because we're now building them in our eScribe system, which is great because when the agenda package is built through the software, it makes it AODA compliant to make sure it's an accessible document. And then the minutes will be done through that same software system. So, which will be a benefit to make sure that everything's compliant. So they'll look a little bit different moving forward.
Oh, well, thank you. So that's fantastic news, actually. And my apologies that I didn't notice. So we have a quorum to start back again, and I just also just sent a message to Andrea as well. So she should be joining us again shortly. So we can reconvene. Starting again from item 1 on our agenda is the adoption of minutes. So that's included in your agenda package starting on page 3. And with minutes, anyone who was in attendance at that meeting can move and second those minutes. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Miranda and seconded by Jane. Perfect. All those in favor, please remain silent. Anyone who opposes or wishes to abstain, please indicate so in the chat or with your reactions. Well, I guess the reactions are a little bizarre, so just open your mic and say so. Seeing none, the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the declaration of any pecuniary interest. I mean, I don't see any items on the agenda that wouldn't, necessarily have any conflicts of interest entailed with them. But if you know of any, certainly please use this opportunity to declare those conflicts. You can indicate so in the chat or grab my attention by unmuting. Seeing none, we'll move to item number 3, which is the adoption of the agenda. Could I have a mover? So any committee member can move or second. Alicia moves, seconded by Heather. All those in favor, please remain silent. Everyone else indicate so in the chat or by unmuting. Okay, so the motion carries. The next item is business arising, and connected to that is the public art policy. Virginia, did you want to speak to this?
So at our last meeting, we started to talk a little bit about the public art policy. One of the questions that had came up from the floor was looking at using Google Docs to share all of that information and have people kind of weigh in on an ongoing basis. I did get clarification from our clerk's department. If we do have those types of shared documents and everybody's providing feedback and it's a back and forth chat, it technically kind of constitutes a meeting. So that's not something that we're kind of really able to move forward with using that type of forum. So what we're hoping to do is we're hoping to have 2 members from the Cultural Vitality Committee that would like to work on kind of getting that framework of the public art policy pulled together. Then that document will be brought back to the committee for review. Everybody will have some time to sit with it, provide feedback to Todd and I, and then we can make those adjustments and kind of move forward with that format.
Great, thank you so much. And is it limited to 2 members?
We were looking at trying to have 2. If we wanted to move it to 3, we could do that as well.
Donna has indicated interest in serving on that committee. Is there another volunteer for the public art policy?
I have a question.
Oh, sure, yeah. Larry with the question. Oh, you're muted at the moment. Can you unmute?
Yeah, art policy, public arts. You mean is it a visual arts? What do you mean?
So it would be looking at any type of public arts installation. So whether it be small scale, large scale, there's funding that is part of the arts and culture funding. And in the cultural plan, looking at enhancing public art throughout the community was kind of a key initiative. So really looking at having some type of policy around there. If we are doing, say, a call out for a piece, what does that competition look like? What are the criteria? What is the process? Do we have agreements, maintenance, future maintenance? It's going to entail a number of pieces. And then there's also, smaller scale art projects, which may be a partnership with, a community member or the university or a different location, do something on a smaller scale. So it's really to lay out some guiding framework for how we engage those individuals, how it fits into the plan. Todd may have some additional comments to add as well. But it's really we don't have that laid out currently. So we really want to put something around it so that artists have an understanding, and how do we review the art as it comes in when we do have call outs.
So it's no overlap with the funding and the grants that we passed out a couple of weeks ago or last month. And I volunteered, I think, to be on a committee that deals with that. I just want to make sure you don't get on too many committees.
No, it's separate. So.
I think if I can jump in, Sean?
Sure.
I think we were looking at this as we talked about before, the working group. So the working group will kind of frame it out and then present it to the committee for kind of a thorough go through. And then from there, we'll kind of put the final document together again for everybody to review. So everybody's going to be involved, but just to get the frame and the core kind of set, that's why we wanted to keep it at the working group, with the working group there. And again, Virginia covered most of it. It's just the structure that is the process, that how that money would be spent or how it's used, and all the maintenance that goes along with that, and to make sure that we're taking care of the artwork that we're developing and that kind of stuff.
Well, thanks so much, Todd. Yasmina has indicated that she's interested in serving, but did you want to speak to that, Yasmina, or just is that all you? Okay.
No.
Great. Are there any other volunteers and anybody else that's dying to be on this on the working group? I don't see any. I offer myself to both of you as I'm happy to chime in when you want another set of eyes, but I also thoroughly trust you as well.
Okay, great. So I have a resolution drafted. So resolve that the Cultural Vitality Committee appoint Donna Helsinger and Yasmina to the Public Art Policy Working Group.
Could I get a mover? Moved by Larry, seconded by Alicia. Great. All those in favor, please remain silent. Anybody else, please indicate your opposition in the chat or by unmuting and saying so. Seeing none, motion carries. thank you both for the work that I know you're going to be putting into that. And again, if you need anything, please do let either me or the staff know, and we'll be happy to help.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is to review Arts and Culture Assistance Guideline updates. So this was forwarded in advance of the meeting as well. Am I right? Okay, great. That is what that was. Great. So that should also be in your email if you don't have it open at the moment. Did you want to speak to it, Virginia?
Yep, I can give a bit of background. So back in November, a report was taken to council called the Community Development Fund Report. And it encompassed 5 different funding programs. The Arts and Culture Assistance Program was one of those programs within that larger fund. So at that time, when it went, the terms of reference for the Cultural Vitality Committee were going as well. So actually within the document, the terms of reference, the committee structure is slightly different than what appeared in the Arts and Culture Assistance Program funding guidelines. So there were some housekeeping items that we needed to do in order to update it. Because it was part of that policy, it needs to go back to council with those updates. So what I did to help the committee see the changes that were made, I did a quick little summary of revisions with the highlighted changes. So there was a lot of little housekeeping things. So under the general notes to applicants, there was a $100 difference between what was in the original one as to where it should be. So it's, instead of 1044, it should have been 1045. We had a date that we had accidentally put in as 2022, and it should have referenced March 2021. So there was a few little things like that. So you can see there's not a ton of changes. The biggest change really was related to some of the feedback that we got from the committee when it related to project viability, organizational and financial health, and how we looked at the 2 different types of organizations. So what we did is we kind of broke that out a little bit better to take that feedback and say, okay, here's kind of all those general pieces. You know, what's the project? Does it have a clear history? Do they have a work plan that's coherent and easy to read? Those are applicable to all groups. We also added in, based off of the committee's feedback, the reference to the CARFAC fees. So making sure that that's being taken into consideration in those applications. And then we pulled down on another line, you'll see, in addition to the above, the following criteria would also be considered and incorporated for organizations, so that those are the ones that have the full financial statement. So it just helped clarify it a little bit for when we go back for review for the next round of applications. And other than that, it's just minor housekeeping pieces throughout the document.
Thanks, Virginia. And is this what the committee to review the cultural, well, what was the cultural financial assistance, is the idea that they will take another look at this, or is this something separate from that?
Sorry, pardon me, Sean?
Is this, are these revisions that are going to be part of what the subcommittee or the working group that was going to look at revisions to the successor of the cultural financial assistance? Is this what they will be looking at, or is this something related but separate? This
is basically the overall guidelines. I think when we come into looking at, and what isn't in here, which we had a lot of discussion about, is how, when we get down to the details of scoring the application and how that information comes through. Todd's built a framework for the actual application, how those attachments will go in, but having the committee take a look at that and then really fine tuning that rubric and how we allocate the funding in the future based off of, you know, are we looking at it at the percentage based off of their score? Like we did that first calculation, or what is that formula going to look like? So that's going to be up to the committee to help us build out that framework from more the evaluation standpoint. This is more the guiding principles that will be there, if that makes any sense. We need some work on that next step when we actually do that evaluation. and the actual submission format that'll make the most sense to streamline it for not for the applicant, but also for us when you're reviewing these applications.
Great, thanks so much for thank you for the clarification. And related to that, so would you like feedback on this now? If there's anything that jumps out to folks as
yeah, if there's any major, like if there's any other major changes with regards to the wording, a lot of it is housekeeping stuff. I think Donna might have a question.
Yes, Donna.
Thanks. My question is, I've read through it, and certainly these guidelines are vastly improved from what we had before, and it's really great to see that. But I just wondered, how often do we intend to be reviewing them? And especially because this is the first year that we've had them in place. So would we, I don't know if we want to get into too much whatever wordsmithing or other details or whatever, but I would feel comfortable knowing that, at the end of, God, I don't even know what, I guess the end of this year or before the next round, we would get a chance to review them just in case other things come to mind as we go along.
Yeah, and I would say that's, I agree with you, Donna, that this, we are going through this transition, and I think things will pop up as we go along. So I think for us, going into next fall, when we are preparing for that next big review of the applications, if there are any adjustments, we're going to want to take that to council for any approval, especially if there's major changes at that time, so that they'll be approved and in place as we evaluate the next round of applications. So, there is, I would imagine, opportunity to do that. And I think it'll be interesting to hear as we do those information sessions with the different community members, and we go through this other process to see what feedback we're getting from them as well, and take that back to the committee for consideration as we maybe look at modifications.
Yeah, and just as a update or a reminder, we have a lot of new members. Those guidelines were kind of vetted by both CAB and ACAT last year. So this is not all brand new to everyone on the committee. So this has run through the actual process already, just like input's great and everything. I think where it'll become more apparent if there's any holes or changes is when we go to work on the application part. The application will definitely point out any holes in the guidelines. Like the two documents are linked, but I think that's when there'll be opportunities there to look at both sides. And if there are any big issues, we can address those then. But I just did want to, this wasn't a brand new document, so to speak. So I just want to point out that this document has a history. It has been vetted by those two other committees already.
Thanks, Todd. On the speakers list, I have Heather, then Larry.
I like the idea of a regular review. Is an annual review. Once this gets going and you've got like the first intake and the second intake, we've got like a little bit of a momentum going. Is an annual review, maybe, is that too often? Every 2 years? Should that be put down as when it gets reviewed? Because obviously committee members can be, rotating and change.
Oh, thanks, Heather. Yeah, I don't think that annual is overly onerous, especially since it would be up to committee members. Yeah. Larry? Oh, you're muted at the moment. Can you unmute?
Just a comment. I have a question, but a comment on the last question. This is surely a dynamic document. So as we go along and go through the processes, I'm sure we'll find things and we'll build from there. So, I guess you can have a formal review, but I wouldn't have it too often, because then you're putting a burden on your shoulders that you're probably going to go through on an ongoing basis anyway. So I like the idea of every time there's a change in the committee, maybe, or every 3 years, or, something like that. I felt with our, when we gave the awards last time, that our backs were really against the wall, and a whole lot of questions came up, and we just, you know, some of them we felt badly that we couldn't give awards because they didn't answer the questions. And some of them we had to hold our noses and we just gave because, you know, there were no rules. But one of the big distinctions, for example, is whether you're supporting art as an activity in itself, or whether you're supporting art or cultural things as an adjunct to something else. So, for example, using art as therapy, the real object of that is therapy, not art. You know what I mean? So, and I think there were a number of other little areas like that that we, you know, that caused us some problems and we should research. And that brings me to the point, have staff been looking at policy in this area for other communities of our size or, you know, a bit bigger?
I mean, I can answer that a little bit just because I've been around the tables for the last couple of years, and that's definitely been a huge, one of the huge tasks that's been on their desks for the last couple of years is looking at, and that was also part of the cultural plan development process. But I certainly take your point, Larry, and I think that's a really important component of the development of the rubrics that are going to be coming, and that working group that you'll be sitting on as well, that we'll look at developing those.
So this is something we'll discuss in the working group.
I believe so. That's
I'm not gonna
the
take any
intention
more.
of that working group. Yes.
I won't take any more of your time.
Oh, no worries. No, it's a committee. It's you take the time that you need. I don't know if Virginia or Todd wanted to add to that, or if that sufficed for an explanation.
No, I think to Larry's point, I think that's the point of having, we really want to get that feedback because we have so many diverse opinions and different perspectives. So I think that's going to help us to get to a really good spot with the whole arts and culture assistance program funding, the rubrics, how we evaluate, and how we really have a strong application and consistency in those applications. So I think it's going to be great as we move forward. So we're looking forward to that feedback.
Sean, if I could just jump in for a quick sec too. Also, yeah, almost everything is based off of research with all different scales and sizes of communities. We kind of pick the best pieces from each one, and then we tailor those to our community through feedback from the committee, and that's the way the process we've been using for the development on almost all of these documents that are coming towards you, the committee or whatever. So like lots and lots of research. I have stacks and stacks of paper and all kinds of stuff on this. So yeah, we're not just creating this like out of thin air. It's all built on research that others have done, you know, other communities' policies and procedures, and, you know, tailoring it to kind of our needs that we heard from the feedback on the cultural plan. So that's kind of the process that we were using for a lot of these development.
Thanks, Todd. Larry, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so Todd, will you be sharing maybe the best dozen of those other community things and let us read through it and think about it before we have to do whatever you want us to do?
Oh yeah, no, we're just trying to, like I said, the working group, we're going to put together that framework. So that'll be Donna, yourself, Jasmina, myself, and the other city staff, Virginia, and I think there's another person. We'll kind of pull all those together. We'll share all the information and kind of the policies we kind of have looked at, and everybody can go through, and then we can make like a framework out of that, and then present that to the kind of the committee to do the final this and add the final dashes, or, you know, cross the T's and dot the I's before we present it to council.
Great, thank you so much, both of you. Is there further discussion on the current proposed revisions to the ACAP guidelines? I see none. I did want to make one small suggestion in relation to the fourth bullet point below proposed project viability and organizational financial health under page 3. But I can work out the wordsmithing a little bit later, but currently it reads, projections of fees and other expenses are backed up by careful research and planning, and course compensate artists appropriately. I really love the spirit of this, and I think it's incredibly important that we start building and conveying the importance of paying artists for their work. I might just tweak it. I might suggest we tweak it a little bit in that maybe if we change it to projections of fees and other expenses are based on appropriate compensation of artists, such as the fees reflected in CARFAC guidelines. Just because, we want to strike a balance between, sorry, I'm speaking just for myself here. My perception is we want to strike a balance between being thorough and also ensuring we have that mechanism of accountability and that expectation that artists are being compensated. Miranda has suggested some wording in the chat that I think is appropriate here. But I think that like careful research and planning, although I am a very vocal advocate of careful research and planning, it's my job, but sometimes that can be really scary for say fledgling organizations or people just starting out. Maybe this is their first grant application, those sorts of things. They might think, oh, this is going to be like a full-time job doing this. Where we're just saying there are fees that are established that are the industry norm. Make sure you're looking at those.
Sean, can
Yes.
you flip me that wording? I was trying to find the right page and I didn't get everything down. So if you're
Oh, sure. I can put that in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Oh, no, if it's in the chat, that's great. I was.
Oh, sorry. I will. I'll put what Miranda has in. Yeah, you'll see. And then Andrea has wanted to something. Sorry, go ahead, Andrea.
So yeah, I guess I'm just wondering if there's any value in sort of demarcating a percentage of the overall grant that would be allocated towards small projects versus larger projects. Because I think that was something we saw in the last round, that potentially if some of those really big, almost operational grants were approved, then that would take up major chunks of the entire grant. So if there's a proportion, like 1/3 for small grants and 1/3 for the larger grants, or is that something that's maybe not necessary at this point? Just because in other organizations, those are different grants. So here we're putting them all into one pool. So having some idea of the division. Thank you.
Virginia?
Yeah, Andrea, and I'm not sure if it captures what you're getting at. Under, say, for example, page, my pages are numbered a little bit differently because of the way they're printed. Under those small project grants and large project grants. So for example, amounts requested up to or under 2,999, they could receive up to a maximum of 100% of their project budget, whereas large project grants between 3,000 and 20, the maximum that we could allocate them would be 75%. So that would be the absolute max. They wouldn't get full funding for those. And I think there's reference to that in a couple other places. So operating, it can't exceed 25% of the applicant's operating budget.
No, I'm asking if we want to sort of have a predetermined proportion of the whole grant amount of the 104,000. 1/3 of that is for small grants and 2/3 for large grants or large projects, or half and half. Like, is that, because something like that could end up being a helpful guideline as the applications increase.
Yeah, I think
because otherwise I think we end up, if we're comparing a large grant or a large project with a small project in the evaluation process, that becomes inherently like we're looking at two different proposals. So if we want to be able to evaluate them properly on their own merits, they have to be in their own sections. But then there should also be, how do we determine which of those sections is prioritized and how much of the budget is to go to each category.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're getting at. I'm trying to think how, and I think it's probably going to warrant some more discussion. And the only reason is every year the applications can vary that we get through, right? I think Donna might want to add something in.
Donna?
I only wanted to say that I know from my perspective, I'm going to keep advocating, Andrea and everyone else, that you know, what we see today is that pot of money, that pot of money continues to grow. We know that pot of money has grown by 100%, if my memory serves me correctly, in the last 2 years budget. And so I think Andrea has a good thought there about, you know, making sure that regardless of size of project, that there's worthy consideration, and, you know, we don't suck up all of the money from, you know, on large or small or whatever. But I just wanted to say that in addition to that, we need to build that pot. And I will continue to work on that as well.
I see Larry's hand.
Could we, I think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Could we leave that to the working group? Because it seems to me, I think it's something we could put in as one of the things that we discuss each year before we start to, you know, to award grants. For example, we might have very few small grant applications and all of them are big, or vice versa. You know, we just don't know what the proportion would be. And I would also hate to put it in the minds of the people out there that it might be better to apply for bigger grants than smaller grants. So maybe it should be part of the process that we consider when we see what we've got in front of us each year. But it's a good point.
Thanks, Larry. That's related to that. Oh, I see Yasmina's hand. I just wanted to comment on what Larry said too, and to say that we could have essentially a movable guideline where, you know, we have a projection of where we expect the break to be in terms of the percentage going to large versus small grants, but during the session confronted with the proportion that actually materializes, we could vote to move that. It's just that it would be an item that is thus on the record. So and reflecting, you know, our adaptability to changing circumstances, but something that we do consciously at that time. I mean, that's an option. I think that, to your point, Larry, I think that it is something that's worth exploring in those committee structures. But Yasmina is next.
Well, I agree with Larry that if we put this is sort of the way I see this document. It's like a policy. And then we can develop a more working procedural document that doesn't go to council, doesn't have to be approved by everybody. It's more, as you just said, sort of our working guidelines as a procedural thing. So I'm all for being fair towards big and small, but I think putting that into a policy document is very, in a way, limiting. Because we don't know, it's unknown who is going, I think Virginia made that point. We don't know who's gonna apply. We don't know what kind of funds they're gonna ask for, what kind of projects they're applying for. So, and we don't have a lot of money.
Sean, did you?
Yeah, when we were developing this, sorry, I don't have a hand thing to raise my hand. How do I do that?
It's under reactions.
Oh, sorry, I'll do that.
I mean, you can speak now.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, when we were developing that, exactly what Yasmina, Larry, and everyone was saying, we tried not to make it limiting because at this point we don't know kind of what we're going to receive. So we tried to keep that broad, and like I said, that could be part of that annual or biannual review process where we see a trend or something. You know, maybe we can. But if we keep that open, that allows us in the future the ability to address all those different needs, even though it changes, without having to keep going back and changing the policy all the time, right? So if we keep it a little broad, it can be up to the committee's discretion on like where the focus is, right? Without it being in that actual document there. So it can be in another document, like Yasmina said, that doesn't have to go to council, but it's still all going through the committee. But that's the way that was designed, open on purpose when we were developing it to accommodate. It didn't matter what we were getting. We could slide the money from one. If there was a greater focus in large projects, we could move it there. If it was in small, we could move it there. And then we didn't get stuck on all the more percentages and things that you work into these. It becomes very convoluted when you're trying to fill these out. And then when you're trying to process them on our end and that kind of thing. So we're just trying to keep it simple.
Okay, so if I could summarize the discussion so far, I would, please let me know if I have this correct. But essentially, I think that we are all in agreement that we want to be mindful of the distribution of the fund between small and large projects. That the committee that will oversee the development of those rubrics will also take on how we do that, but in a way that's mindful of the need for flexibility, given that we don't necessarily know what each pool of applicants will be year to year. Is that a fair assessment of the discussion so far? And are there any further comments related to it, particularly from any committee members who haven't spoken yet? Or those who have? Okay, so that sounds to me like we're good. We've got some minor wording changes, but otherwise the proportion that's going to move to the rubric working group, which is the name that I've chosen for it. Sorry, I'm sure it will have a better name. Is there anything else related to the revisions to the ACAP guidelines? Sorry, Todd, I don't mean to pick on you, but your hand is still up. I don't know if I don't know if you.
Oh, sorry, it's I'm new with the reaction thing.
That's okay.
Lower my hand, or I'll be have it up.
I wasn't sure if you were trying to get my attention again or not.
No, sorry.
Okay, great. Okay, any last call for any further comments or questions on the ACAP guidelines? And of course, this is with the understanding that there will be further reviews as we go through, as the committee progresses. All of us have a 2-year term. We'll revisit it again in the future. Next item on the agenda, and I take it is that an information item, or is that something that we need to move to approve those revisions?
No, I think just as information. I don't think we need
Okay.
Anybody to move it right now.
Great. The next item we have is subcommittee or task force updates. So related to that, I think we've already had the striking of the public art policy working group. So thank you for those of you who have volunteered for that. What else would we, Virginia, would you like to speak to any other items under? Yeah.
So the way, sorry, there isn't anything under there now. There will be. So it was just
Okay.
part of.
That was a standing item. Okay.
Yeah, it's just how they built out our agenda package items. So those are all kind of there. And then when we do have them, those appear as 5.1, 5.2, however they've been added in. So it's just a placeholder right now.
Great. And I guess related to this, a question that I have is, when would it be appropriate to strike that committee, or that, sorry, I've got to get the nomenclature right, but to strike that working group to look at the rubric, is that something more mid-spring that we would be looking at, Virginia?
Actually, I was going back through my notes, and I think we had volunteers, but we didn't end up formally appointing anybody because we started talking about the Google Docs conversation, and we
Right.
never did pass a resolution. I had thought that we had appointed, because I know Larry had volunteered, and I think possibly Miranda. I'm trying to remember if anybody else had volunteered for that or not. We would
Katie
need a,
Blunt had, on my notes, had volunteered as well.
so we probably should have the resolution now for that as well, to point those
Great.
members to look at that. And then we'll probably start to look at having those meetings sometime in the next month or so.
Okay, perfect. So could everybody who intends to offer themselves for that working group, could you indicate so in the chat, just as a reminder? I know that that's not the, you just as an open calling, some of you offered at our last meeting, but anybody who also wishes to, who maybe didn't, you know, you can still volunteer. So we had Larry, we had Miranda, and Miranda asks, is this for the rubric and the application? That was my understanding. Yes, great. Larry, Miranda.
Donna was in it, I think, too.
Donna, perfect. And Alicia. Great. Okay, so we'll have a motion to, oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, oh, Donna's in. Donna, you're in as well?
Okay, so you guys are gonna laugh at me, but I remember saying there was something I wanted to do in the last meeting that I was in, but I will be completely honest and tell you that I don't exactly remember what that was.
I completely get it.
It's lots, lots of
Yeah.
different. So can somebody remind me?
I thought you had volunteered for public art.
Yes, that was today.
Well,
But
we discussed public art at the last meeting as well too.
oh, okay.
So
Then I don't. Public art is really, yes, then I'll stick with public art. That's fine. Because we have other folks who are going to work on the application and the rubric. That's great. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. I'll entertain a motion if somebody would move that we strike the committee to review the rubric and application for the arts and culture
Working group, Sean, working group.
Working group, strike a working group for reviewing the arts and culture assistance program application and rubric for assessment. Could I have a mover? Moved by Heather Bott, seconded by Larry. All those in favor, please remain silent. And well, sorry, I have to catch myself on this process thing. Is there any discussion on that? I think we've already had it. Seeing none, all those who are in favor, please remain silent. Anyone opposed or who wishes to abstain, please indicate so in the chat or by unmuting yourself and signaling so. The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is new business. Part of that is, and 6.1 is the cultural policy updates. Did you want to speak to that, Virginia?
yeah, so this is actually just for the committee's information to start, so that you have some time to review the cultural policy, take a look at it, and then I'm hoping that at our next meeting, we can actually have more discussion around some of the changes that need to be made. There are a number of changes in there because the cultural policy that did reference the Cultural Advisory Board. Now it has to shift to the Cultural Vitality Committee. So there's a number of little changes like that. Also, we now have a cultural plan, which was one of the items that the previous Cultural Advisory Board was working towards. So just take some time over the next, between now and the next meeting to take a look at that. If you have any comments or suggestions, send those to Todd and I, and we can kind of compile that into something that we can share with the rest of the committee so that we'll have that kind of in advance of our next meeting.
Thanks, Virginia. And I saw Andrea indicated that she had to leave due to a class at 5:30. Do we still have quorum?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes.
Okay. So thank you. And the cultural policy was also attached in the email that went out. So I don't know about you guys. I'm looking forward to diving in there. Next item, well, while we're on new business, actually, in terms of timing, I regret Joseph had to take off before before I had the chance to bring it up. But so Joseph Fredden, for those of you who weren't at our last meeting, he is a placement student working with me at Nordic, and he's been volunteering to develop the Buy Local Arts campaign, or some of the mechanisms for that, especially our social media presence. Some of you may have received a friend request or an invitation to like a page on Facebook or Instagram. And I wanted to highlight that. What I'll do is actually distribute where you can find those accounts on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, although the Twitter, honestly, not a lot of people on Twitter for this purpose in this location. So it largely just recycles posts from Instagram, but that's okay. But we want to build the followers for these accounts. And also, if you have, if you know people who are looking to promote their work, or you have, this is an open call to anybody and any viewers who are watching this video as well. Tag the account, and that will be reposted. It's not a like a juried thing. It's just to promote the awareness of the arts that are current. I don't necessarily like the word arts products, but essentially those materials that people have for sale, that they're trying to support themselves as artists, to promote that work, and also attendance at performances and ticketed events, these sorts of things. So I will circulate that to the committee, but for anybody listening, yes, it's Buy Local Arts SSM in Algoma on Facebook. That's the page. And on Instagram, it has a very similar name, which is buy_local_art_SSM, because of course, the restrictions on handles. So check those out. And like I said, I'll make sure that all the committee members have access to them. So that's the only thing that I had under new business. Is there any other new business that members would like to bring to the committee's attention? Heather?
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment. We've got like buy local content on our blog on Algoma Country. So if there's something that maybe you guys want to craft up that we could put in there, because we don't have anything about art, it's just mostly, it's like food and it's retail, and we're going to do something for, when it gets closer to summer, maybe like staycations and stuff for staying in accommodations. But yeah, something for art would be great, and culture, and just to try to get people to even just, we can put out there and we'll put up on Facebook and stuff. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather. Any other new business from any members? Donna indicated we should share that from our hotel social too.
I'm just saying, Sean, like share those links or whatever they are, and there's lots of different channels, right? Like I could share it through Algoma Fall Festival, or we could share it through the hotel, or right, lots of different ways we could get that out there.
Awesome, thank you so much. And Joseph's been doing a great job in getting that all set up, so I just wanted to sing his praises a bit. I guess this is the last call for any new business. Seeing none, the next item is correspondence, which is just a standing item. We don't get a lot of correspondence as a committee, but has there been any, Virginia? Nope. Okay, so moving on. Next meeting is scheduled for April 21st, 2021 at 4:30 via Zoom. Are there any, does anybody have any comment on that or anything that we should be aware of related to that? No? Okay. Hopefully that works for most folks. The next item is adjournment. Could I have a mover to adjourn? Moved by Miranda, seconded by Alicia. And all those in favor, please remain silent. All those opposed, indicate so in the chat. Motion carries. We are adjourned, which is kind of sad. It's only been an hour. It's always so lovely to see you all. But I look forward to working with all of you very soon. And can't wait to get into that cultural policy.
Happy reading, everybody.
Thanks.
There'll be more coming, so.
Even better, Todd. Thank you.
Gonna make you guys work.
That's what we're here for.
Definitely.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye. Have a good night.
Take
Great
care.
to see you all.
You.
Bye, Larry. Bye, Miranda. Bye.